Chloe, how are you feeling today?
Quite well. I started back into the daily life. It's up when we're recording. Obviously, this is a bit after the festivities, so it's a bit strange. I always feel like whenever I want to close a year, I like to meditate and look back at what I've done in the past 12 months. And it's also the only period where everybody's taking some time off.
Yeah.
So it's a heavy period because it's a lot of processing of what happened in the previous 12 months. And I always overlook how much work I would have done or how much energy I might have put into different things. So it's always a bit of a heavy period for me. I don't know if you can relate with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this festivity was quite particular for me as well. Because it was the first time that I actually did almost nothing productive. In fact, I logged it into my weekly journal that I publish every Sunday. And it was a period that I tried to detach myself from my usual hustle and bustle sort of. So definitely I can relate to that. What lessons emerged from last year, Chloe, for you?
I think I'm still in the process of it, if I'm being very honest.
Yeah.
It was a very heavy year for me, also for personal reasons, but also professionally. I graduated from my Master of Advocacy and immediately started another course, and that didn't really leave a lot of time to, I guess, grasp the fact that a 5-year law course was just done. And I also found out that I graduated when I was at the UN, so I was busy at work, and I actually realized I graduated because we had a 30-minute gap as a break. And I went on Messenger, and my fellow colleagues were all saying, the results are out. And I just went there and said, okay, nice. Okay. And then they're like, okay, speech is coming up. And that's it. So it's kind of, at a point I realized, I was like, wow, it's in a way it's so underwhelming. That's so much work and energy and the thesis and the 4-year bachelor's before that, for this to be the moment. So in a way, that was quite interesting to see. I think one of the main lessons I learned is how important it is to, at least for me, to prioritize having some me time. Mm-hmm. I think we sometimes glorify how important, not important, but like we glorify the busyness of life. Yeah. And being overworked sometimes is seen as kind of a badge of honor or something like that. And I've learned that quite a few years ago because I had a burnout, and to get back into it, I knew I had to set a lot of boundaries. But the moment that you don't stick with those boundaries, even just a bit, it kind of topples down to any free hour you might have ends up in a meeting or a project that you have to work from home with. So that is something that definitely 2025 taught me. And sometimes something also I really learned is how sometimes your body shows you that you need some rest. And like I always realize I don't really get sick very often, but the times that I do get sick is in the periods where I'm really overworked. And for me, that's like a tell that my body is just done and needs a couple of days to rest. And so I'm trying to keep that in mind as I schedule my 2026. We're still in the very first few weeks, so it's easy to say that now. Speak to me in a few months, and I will probably say it has changed. But that is something that definitely I've learned from 2025. Mm-hmm.
I really resonate with that because something that I discovered, and something that surprised me actually with the festivities break, is that I felt that I forgot how to rest. So I've been very much immersed into work for the best part of the past 10 years. Okay. So I actually realized that I thought that I was resting. I thought that I was having a break. When in reality, my mind kept on thinking of the next thing.
Yes, of course.
And these 2 weeks really exposed that. So I really relate to what you're saying. And that's something during 2026 I would like to do a bit more, to relearn how to rest, relearn how to find myself. I was always prioritizing me time. So that's something that has been a staple throughout my life so far. But the quality of the me time needs to change, at least in the stage that I'm in my life at this stage. So I definitely relate to what you're saying. In terms of goals, Chloe, what are your goals now, at least for Q1
I think
2026?
Goals for me is really difficult.
Okay.
I try not to set these huge goals. So for me, I always try to say that, because realistically, at least in my current life, the way it looks is that the things that I'm doing the things that I was doing 12 months ago are things which 24 months ago I never thought were possible. So it's really difficult for me to say, by the end of 2026, I want to do this and this. I do have goals. I set out, I want to move my body more often. I have an injury right now, but I do want to, go more on walks. Thank you. I want to read more and like intentionally read, not just skim through something.
Yeah.
I want to process things in ways that I feel are most comfortable for me. Like I love journaling. So whenever I have a really heavy, which is very frequently, sadly, but whenever I have really heavy emotions, I need to sit down and I need to write them down and I need to process it that way. And sometimes I don't have the time for it. You know, I travel 5-6 months out of the year, and that's really heavy on everything. You know, I have had so many cancelled flights, which usually for most people, that's the thing that happened that month.
Yeah.
For me, it's the thing that happened that day, and we move on. And I realized like those things really build up.
Yep.
And it end up in me like having near meltdowns in airport bathrooms, which I really would, I mean, they have to happen, it's fine, but
yes.
you know, ideally I would avoid. So that's something that I think these next 3 months I really want to work on, is just finding dedicated time when the sole agenda for that hour or two is just to sit down, what has happened in the week, how do I feel about it, where do I want to go forward. Now, more academic, I would like to focus on my dissertation. We're quite behind, which I'm not very proud to say, but ideally, I start building up those numbers and start working towards finishing up some chapters. So that's going to be the goal for the next few months. I'm also, well, at time of recording, warrant exam for law, for advocates is coming up. So that is also something which is going to take a lot of time. I also have quite a few trips coming up, work, volunteering basis. So that's also going to be a huge priority. And then the rest, I also want to carve some time out to hang out with my family, my friends, and my partner. I've been really good at that this past month because I've been at home.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when things get a bit busier, I tend to not really dedicate those time, but rather, I'm in your city, I'm in your town, I'm close to you, do you want to go have a coffee? Yeah. And I would like to have a bit more intentional. So that's like the next 3 months, which is quite heavy already. But I always say, like, everything I do, I want to have peace with what I'm doing, and I want to be content doing it. And the moment it no longer fulfills me, that's the point where I do a bit of adjustment and reanalyzing what I am doing. And I want to read a lot more books, but not really quantity, but rather the quality of books. I've been obsessed with classics recently. I had to spend 2 weeks not really able to move a lot. I was quite immobile because of my ankle, so I just ended up reading a lot of books, and I found a lot of joy in that. And I love the part where after I finish a chapter which has like some sort of, not plot twist, because classics I don't think well, they do sometimes, but it's not really a plot twist, it's not characterized as such, but something that has some teaching, to just kind of write it down or find a really good quote and underline it. I love that part, and I love the slower intentional hobbies more. So that's the priority right now. Bit of a lengthy answer to your question.
No, that's okay. We have time.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Well, what I'm appreciating as well is the parallels that I'm seeing in your journey and mine as well. So that's something that I'm not a very a good reader, let's say. I do appreciate the art of reading, and actually when I was traveling back to Malta in December, I read have a book. Let's say. So that's pat on my shoulder, let's say. So I do appreciate the art of reading. I just don't find myself giving it so much time during my life, let's say. But I do think there is a lot of value in that, because the process, while you're reading, if you're intentional, as you're saying, if you're aware and grounded while you're reading, there is that kind of learning that doesn't happen by you listening to something, you watching a video, with you interacting or brainstorming with an AI tool.
Exactly.
There is an art to reading that I think the human being hasn't found a way to replicate yet.
Yep. And I think for me as well, is what I really realized is I'm reading currently Dostoevsky's The Idiot. It's 559 pages. And I've been reading it for 12 days. Usually, like if you told me 5-6 years ago to read a 500-page book, I would do it in a day or two. But my attention span this past few years has really decreased. And I would say also partially my social media, and I'm chronically online as most 23-year-olds. But ideally, I would like to be able to sit down without any interruptions. So in a way, I'm trying also to do this as an exercise to train myself and my brain again to being able to read long chapters and heavy content without needing to grab my phone and go on Instagram and scroll through reels. Because unfortunately, when I was studying, so I this is my 6th year at uni, I did the Bachelor of Laws, I did a Master of Advocacy. I could never sit down for 3 hours and study without gravitating towards my phone. Yeah. And it's a really bad habit. I don't enjoy having this habit. So I really want this year to be able to say, yes, I'm able to not be as online or needing that really rush dopamine hit, which I think we all have gotten used to.
Yes.
So long form content, more reading, less online. That's kind of what I really want this year to look like. Like I want to look back at December 2026 and say, yeah, I managed to do it. And I'm very proud of myself for doing it. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But hopefully it does. Or at least it will be closer or a bit better than it is now.
How does it feel like to go against something which is almost second nature?
I think for me, I always like to test myself, and I like challenging myself a lot. I love doing that. I love little challenges. I'm not going to do a 5K. That's not the kind of challenges. That's not meant for me. I'm very aware of that. But I think I grew up playing the violin, dancing, singing, reading a lot. I grew up in the art forms in ways. So for me, that was my nature. And then when we started, I got Facebook when I was 15. I was very late to the game.
Okay.
But it's really addictive. And I love having friends tons away. And I realized also, like with ChatGPT, with AI, that sometimes I ask AI for things which I can answer myself if I give myself a minute or two. Yeah. And it also starts with, what recipes should I make with these random ingredients? Before I had AI in my pocket, literally, I never needed to ask anyone, and I just came up with recipes. And I analyzed like this past year, and I realized how much I rely on this kind of technology, which is also good. Like technology does have its good spots, of course. But then it gets to a point where with everything that's going on in the world, with the amount of content I consume, what quality am I receiving? So that was kind of the process that led to this.
What led to you seeking this kind of balance, perhaps inner balance, I might add?
So in September, I was in New York for 2 weeks for things that had to do with my mandate as the United Nations Youth Delegate. And you spend, which is also like very relevant to my cause, you spend all day in front of a screen. And when you're in New York, you don't want to spend a full day in front of a screen and then in the evening go on your phone. You're in New York, you want to explore. Despite being in New York for a long time, you still want to see, because there's something to see.
Yeah.
And as I walked around like different areas of New York, you realize how many people just have different hobbies, which are not the hobbies that I have. Like I always love reading. I always love talking with my friends. I always love going out for coffee, but I hadn't done a crossword puzzle in years.
Okay.
Really random. And I was walking past and a friend of mine was just, I looked at her tote bag and inside she had crossword puzzles because her and her husband like to do that. I was like, I really miss having these like hobbies which you just take with you.
Okay.
And you go to another part of the city and you just do that. And then from there, I kind of started analyzing, okay, what am I doing with my day? Because how we spend our days is how we're spending our lives, right? So that's like kind of the way we started with that. And I looked at like the way I was spending the past few months and I realized I was also quite unhappy because constantly consuming content is not really something that brings me a lot of joy. I like creating things. I'm more creative. When I was younger, I used to write poems all the time. I used to write short stories. I used to like love that was my joy. And I no longer did that. So that was kind of the shift. And then when I went back, when I came back home for one night at the time and I went to Madeira for a conference. But we were sitting around the table, not much bigger than this. And a friend of mine was saying that one thing that he regrets not doing since starting to travel as often is to not journal much. And I was like, you know what, like last week I was in New York and I thought, I used to love to create. And now instead I'm just consume. And we kind of started having this conversation. And he was like, yeah, one thing I really regret is that when I look back in 5-10 years, I will never remember certain emotions that I went through or certain people that I met or certain experiences, because unless we take a photo, we don't really remember it because we live such a fast-paced life. And that was the part where I was like, okay, if I remove and I look a bit at the screen time, which wasn't that bad to begin with, I'm going to tap myself on the shoulder there. But if I look at the amount of time I'm online instead of doing things which might be a bit more beneficial for my long-term health mentally, maybe it's time for a bit of a change. So that's kind of the way it all started. And now I'm really enjoying it. I'm still online.
Yeah.
Not as much. Trying not to go on Instagram first thing in the morning, even though it's addictive to do that. And I'm trying to not use my phone in the 30 minutes before I go to sleep. And that's working. I think that works out really well at this point. So I'm enjoying that.
And it seems very practical. I think once you start looking into the insights as to how much time you spend on any social media platform, I think a good question to ask for yourself would be, is this the amount of time that I would like to dedicate online on this platform? And if you're content with that answer, you continue doing that.
Yep.
But I'm sure it will give you perspective.
It does.
Because the time just flies away.
It does, exactly.
You continue scrolling, and you wouldn't realize an hour or two would have passed.
Yep.
So it's, what's the word? It's escaping me at the moment. It's doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling, doom scrolling.
I think we spend more time than we realize, much more time.
I think we spend more, sometimes, like I generally do think that we spend more time doom scrolling than talking to real people. And I do believe that in this past year, I've spent maybe more time doom scrolling than talking to real life people. Because when I'm at airports, when I have a 6-hour layover,
what do you do?
Exactly. Most of the times I'm working, but if I am just done with working, and I also try to work on planes because I have no interruptions there, then I'm going to go on my phone. Realistically, I'm going to go on Instagram and I'm going to doom scroll.
For sure.
So it's also that. Or when I'm working from different time zones and I finish my work, there's no one, I'm just going to go on Instagram and I'm just going to scroll away. So that was a big kind of thing where I was like, maybe that should change. And I'm glad it is.
So it seems that this trip to New York gave you a bit of perspective.
Yes. Like I feel like it was the longest, so 3 weeks, which I know sounds quite insane, but that is the longest time period I spent in the same city at a time in 2025. Except in June, where I spent June, I spent a month in Malta because I had exams. But usually every week and a half, 2 weeks, I have a trip. Okay. So 3 weeks in one city, in one room, that was my base for those whole 3 weeks. That was the longest I've been in one place for 9 months. So that immediately gave me a bit of perspective. I had a lot more time to just not needing to pack things up constantly and move around. So I think that's one of the reasons why it was, I guess, not inspirational, but rather process worthy. I don't even know the word for it, but I think it's understandable.
Chloë, for the people who we didn't start with the introduction, of course, but for the people who are listening to you for the first time or watching you for the first time, who are you?
Okay, so that's my therapist.
I was quite intentional how I asked it. Who are you?
My therapist and I have had a lot of sessions on this one, and it's not yet a fully well-crafted answer. I would say if it was more philosophical, I would say probably a work in progress. I think that's always what I describe myself with, which is I am a work in progress.
Aren't we all a work in progress?
Exactly. Yeah. And I hope that as I go along in life, I understand more who I am. But so just a bit of an introduction. I am 23 years old. I'm originally from Gozitan, born and raised. I am right now I'm board member of the European Youth Forum and Malta's United Nations Youth Delegate. I'm the senior delegate right now. We have 2 delegates for the UN. I recently graduated from a Bachelor of Laws in 2024, Master of Advocacy in 2025, and currently reading for a Master in International Law, Master of Laws in International Law by research from the University of Malta. So that's kind of the academic and volunteering roles that I currently have.
What do you think sparked your inclination towards, let's say, your role within UN?
I think that was a bit of, I'm not even sure how it started, the UN specifically. So when I was 9 years old, I joined my primary school's student council. I founded it. I was very proud of it. I wanted that because another school had it and I wouldn't accept that my school didn't. And that was my first not volunteering because it was the school, but it was my first engagement in like civic engagement, civic responsibility, understanding that you're not just yourself on this planet. And then from there, I was a very weird kid growing up. I had constantly my nose in books. Most people that know me as a child will say, oh yes, she always had a book in her bag. Even now I have a book in my bag. I constantly had books. I played the violin. I was very much the quiet kid who just liked to think a lot and in her own world in a way. I didn't have a lot of friends. I also went through quite intense bullying. So I found a lot of peace living in this kind of my world and very hard to trust anyone to get into this world. So in a way, what changed that was I think when I was I know I was in secondary school, I think I was 13, the English-speaking union, which is a union that also has a base in Malta, opened its Gozo branch. And my school always saw that I excelled academically, so they suggested that I also go for this program of English speaking, public competitions, this kind of thing, debating, public speaking. So this area of work. And I fell in love with it. I loved it. I used to write poetry, so from that I turned it into writing speeches.
Okay.
I loved debating, I still do. And from there, when I started sixth form, there was this mini European Assembly, which is, I think still, I'm not sure if it's still going now to this day, but I was selected as part of one of the teams. And from there, I started finding these simulations of the European Parliament, the European Union, the UN. And when I started uni, I joined the Malta Model United Nations organization, and then I became a president of it. And I loved the UN. And I was doing that in conjunction with my work in the National Youth Council at the time. And from the National Youth Council, I worked a lot on international conferences, and I was the international officer, so I got elected to the European Youth Forum as a board member. And simultaneously, I had tried out for the interview process with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs to become a United Nations Youth Delegate, and I was selected.
Okay.
So that was kind of it. The spark of it is I love multilateralism. I love that there is this table that is created for different states to negotiate texts and come up with ideas for the SDG goals. These kind of things is something that really inspires me. It does bring me a lot of joy. It sparks my drive. I love it. I can do it full-time all my life. I absolutely adore it. And that is kind of how it got me into the UN Youth Delegate interest, I would say.
This will sound like a pun, but how did you find your voice into the linking between being the child where you were on your own, in your own world, but then linking it to being confident and speaking in speeches, debates? How did you find your voice into that space?
It was really difficult. I think at a point I really hated it. This thing, I fell in love with it because finally I felt like I had some power over my life. I could say what I felt all my life, but I never had the space to do it. I always expressed myself before through dance and violin. That was the only things that I had which I felt like I could truly express myself. But then when I started doing public speaking, it was the first time I've ever tried out for something, and I had mentors that genuinely believed in me and said, yes, this is something you should definitely pursue. And I continued doing it. I won the European title for JCI, and then I represented JCI. Well, first I won the JCI Malta, and then I represented them at the European Championships. Didn't win the first time around, but in the next year I also represented Malta once again, and I won the European Championships, and then represented Europe at the Worlds. And through it all, I think that is the thing that gave me this much confidence in myself. Not that I have this kind of a lot of confidence in myself. I obviously still have doubts. I doubt myself all the time. And I obviously also have my parts where I'm conscious about things about myself. But it brought me out of my shell in a way. And it was honestly through the people, a lot of volunteers that generally believe that a lot of children, because we were all in school at the time, really young people, need to have these spaces where they learn how to think critically, but also express what they're believing in and what they want to show in front of an audience. And I still go back as a judge. I'm actually judging a competition later on this month for the same branch. I love going back to it because it's the thing that, honestly, in a way, saved my life. I don't know who I would be without it. Definitely not on this path.
Okay. What does it say about you?
I'm not sure. I think what it says about me is that, in a way, I'm a very grateful person. I learned how to use a lot of the pain points in my life to change them into something a bit more inspiring, not only to myself, but also to young girls that went through a very similar story. And I go back to mentor a lot. And that for me, giving back is really important for me. So every single experience I have, I try to give back through it. And sometimes it's very local in Gozo, sometimes it's in the US with women to women. It really depends. But that for me is very important. I have this constantly have this feeling of giving back and duty, but it's like, it's not just something to do, it's a duty to do it. And that for me is very important.
You seem to be having such a high degree of responsibility.
Yeah.
Which
is very scary as well.
I know.
It's very, very scary. And for me, there's the first time, I remember it very, very clearly. we were in Boston 2021. A girl came up to me and told me, "You're my role model." And at that point, I was like, I'm about to faint. Because I was a 19-year-old girl, I was like, I'm nobody's role model. I make a lot of mistakes in my daily life, which definitely should not be repeated. And for me, it took me months to actually be able to accept that. And it took guidance from my mentors to help me accept that you're in a position which people might look up to.
What do people often misunderstand about confidence?
I think about confidence in general. I would say that people don't have self-doubts, but not self-doubts is a better word for it. When you're
Awareness.
conscious of...
Yeah. Okay.
The thing is, you can be a very confident speaker, but the moment that you put me in a gym, for example, that's a really good point. In a gym that I do not know anyone, I might not be as confident. And sometimes I am still scared to speak in front of certain people. Okay. Just because I'm a confident public speaker doesn't mean I don't have my doubts or my insecurities. That's the word, insecurities. Okay. I think a lot of people think confidence is something which, once you have it, that's it.
In every aspect of your life.
In every aspect of my life. Yep. Throughout my 5 years of law school, I had insecurities about every single thing, every single unit that I took. I was always worried that I wasn't smart enough, even though I had the marks and I had people telling me you are. I still had that insecurity, or that I wouldn't go to progress another year. I constantly had this insecurity that something bad could happen and I wouldn't be able to continue my studies. So yeah, I think that's a really a lot of people don't understand that sometimes. Yeah.
What makes you feel confident?
This sounds really cliche. One of the people I look up to the most is Maya Angelou. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's long gone, but
yes, Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou. Yeah. And one of the things she says is something which, for a very long time, I refused to believe, which is, well, not refuse to believe. That sounds quite vague, which is not that. So Maya Angelou has written books. She had a very traumatic childhood. I relate to her childhood a lot. I had similar experiences to her. She was also bullied. She was also picked on. And she also delved her life in her childhood into books. And she found her confidence and her world. That's the thing. In books, I found different worlds. Yeah. If I could close my eyes, I could see me walking in a field with Pollyanna. That kind of, I had these little worlds with the books. But one thing that Maya Angelou always said is, first and foremost, when you go on stage, for example, you take every single person that you know with you. So it's a very weird exercise. But what I do is, before I compete, is I say, okay, mom, dad, my sister, my partner, my friends, my grandma, you're coming on stage with me. They're not there, I'm alone. But it's taking the confidence and the support that they give me back home with me everywhere I go. And then the part where I was going to say for a long time, I kind of refused to accept it in a way, is that I am a child of God. And therefore, everything I do is also resembling what God wants me to do. Okay. I grew up very Roman Catholic. I grew up in charity school. So obviously, I also had some doubts with my religion, as everybody does when you're going through the teenage angst and growing into a young adult. But that for me brings me a lot of solace. And I pray a lot. I meditate a lot. I try my best to remember the positive things I have about myself rather than negative things. That's also through years of therapy. And I try my best to, whenever I need to, I reach out for help. And that usually is my friends or my partner. And I give them a call and be like, today I'm feeling kind of worried about this. And they'll talk me through it. I have 3 friends that always know what to say because they know me so well. And they're used to this in a way. So that really helps me.
Having that support system is quite
important. It's everything.
For me, it's... because I relate to your answer as well, and I agree with you that you can not be confident in different areas. So you can be very confident in one area because of X reason, but then feel intimidated, afraid, or whatever feeling that emerge in another area, which can be similar, but for you, it might be different. For me, when I'm being confident, for me, it's a visualization.
Okay.
So I'm a very strategic person, and I try to bring the strategic part into tangible things.
Okay.
So strategy in itself, it's something which, at least for me, it's quite abstract. It's something that we can't see or feel because it's in the future.
Exactly, it's in the future.
It's meant to be that way. But the question that grounds me is when it comes to strategy, for example, is what can I do today in order for me to...
what you can control.
Yes, it's what I can do to help me get closer to where I want to be. So visualization and making things as tangible as possible does help me out. So although I have a different view of this because it's a very personal view, if I'm going up on stage or if I'm sitting here, I visualize. How does it feel to be sitting on this seat? What would I say? What would I ask? How would I behave? In what tone would I have? What responses would the audience would have? So, and that is an exercise that helped me a lot when I was founding my business around 5 years ago. In Endeavor, we provide to our clients people and people-related solutions, or provide leadership training, one-to-one sessions with emerging leaders, partners, directors, different people across their leadership journey across in companies, and also when it comes to teams. And more often than not, till today, I'm speaking to people who are senior to me, both in age and experience. So I need to be very confident in what I'm about to say, but also very humble to be receptive of what they can share.
Exactly.
And then create something together with them that makes sense. Most often than not, when I'm sitting with senior leaders, sometimes I'm not presumptuous enough to think that I'm teaching someone to this person. I see myself as a mere facilitator for them to see something which is a different perspective, or perhaps if they are too immersed in the operation side of things, I'm there to help them see a little bit of the strategic aspect, because they're so immersed in the day-to-day that I'm there to facilitate. But that required a lot of visualization and a lot of battling the imposter syndrome.
That's very important.
So the question would be, am I qualified to give this speech? Am I knowledgeable enough? Have I studied enough? Have I prepared myself enough? Who am I to be sitting on this seat or on this stage?
Exactly.
So I'm not sure if you resonate with those thoughts, but
so much.
You can appear the most confident person in the room, but those thoughts still cross your...
Fake it till you make it.
Yes.
That's No, I live by it sometimes. I mean, I also have this imposter syndrome sometimes. And that's also the part, because I get in my head quite frequently, because I have to. Because I do something similar, which is like, when I'm going to give a training to X group of people, I don't know who they're going to be. I'm going to walk into a room, I don't know. Will they prefer to have it a bit lighter with more jokes? I am someone who loves to laugh. I love cracking jokes. I love seeing the room smile. I love that. That is always something I will try and work towards, but not everybody likes it. So sometimes I tone it down. Sometimes I realize that some people are very uncomfortable. It's the first time they're doing something similar. They've never done this before. They're super uncomfortable with this. They don't know how to share. They don't know how to explain. And sometimes you do need to make it lighter and crack some jokes and make it a bit more familiar towards them. So you need to adapt to the group that you're doing it with. So I always kind of close my eyes and be like, okay, the one thing I no longer do is imagine how the room looks like, because I did try it, I remember, for a competition, and the room looked very different to what I assumed. And
that happens from time to time.
That really, really annoyed me. That's annoying, but it had really shook me. And I was like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. But instead I try to think, okay, if my presentation goes wrong and they don't really relate to it, what can I do? What can I control? There's some things I can control. Most I can't, because I'm relying on other people's feedback, experiences. But the things that I can control, what can I do? So I guess in a way, I just do something similar. Not as much with the tone. That is not as much that I think it also just comes in a way natural, more free-flowing, just because when you're trained to do it from a very young age, it's really hard to break that training. But I also in a way try to visualize the space or the experience that I will have, knowing that it will change, because it always changes from what I initially would have thought.
On the tone, sometimes you need to adjust the tone because of what you observe within the audience. Sometimes you need to slow down so that people understand
you.
Sometimes you need to lower your voice to make a bit of an emphasis on something.
Yes, and that's very important.
So it's something that I think you learn how to do
With practice.
I wouldn't say, and yes, I think that's the better word, with practice. So I wouldn't say it's instinctive, but the more you do it, and I think something that is underestimated or undervalued perhaps is when you are public speaking, not necessarily in public speaking, but in giving
a training, a workshop, whatever,
is understanding your audience and understanding body language, and be agile enough to react to what you're sitting with or presenting to.
Standing with, just to have a bit of a fun. I love doing this, and they always bring in giggles, and that's why I love it.
Because it's a clever way of how you make an argument.
And I also, like, for me, it's something that I always, this is the thing I learned through competitions, is you never know who's going to be in the room. I remember I had a competition on bias in AI. At that point, I think I was in my third year law degree. I definitely did not understand how biases work. And I knew that some people in the room would be experts in the field. Yeah. I knew I was the youngest person in the whole entire conference. Not the youngest competitor, but the whole conference. So I knew I was probably the least qualified to give such a speech. And if you go into a space with that mentality, you're going to fail from the first word. You're not even going to get on the stage. And, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So that's also something where I'm like, okay, some people are going to be experts. Some people do not understand what AI means. And you need to adapt for both settings.
Yeah.
And that took quite a few years of training. But I think I'm good at that. Mm-hmm. I would say I am, yeah. But it is difficult, and it does come with practice. That's the thing. And I always also say it to people that I give training towards on public speaking is the only thing that will make you a better public speaker is when you practice it. The art form of public speaking is generally just you practice. That's it. You learn how to do it in your style, your flow, but you have to practice to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. And when you do it in real life, so with something, there is that element of you have to fail.
Yes.
So this might sound a little bit pessimistic, but that's the way I see it. It's you are constantly failing to some extent, because after giving training, a workshop or a speech or a debate, afterwards, if you do any form of a post-mortem exercise, you will always find something that you can do better.
Yes.
So you fix A, B becomes the problem. You fix B, A becomes the problem, or C emerges.
Yep.
So there is always something that you can do better, and that's the fun of it in a way.
Yes, totally.
That is, ironically, even though it's a little bit painful sometimes, that's what makes it fun. And sometimes I have a couple of friends of mine who tend to visualize and stay in the visualization process and not doing the actual thing. And I think that is missing out, because between visualization or imagining that you are doing it and actually doing it, there's a whole completely different learning curve.
Yep.
Because once you're doing it, there are the physical sensations, the doubts that emerge during, and there's the stress of being into that situation and how you see yourself, if you're comfortable sitting with certain emotions and feelings. So there's a whole lot of things going on when you are in a high pressure situation. Obviously, right now we're speaking about public speaking or presenting of sorts, but any kind of high pressure situation where there's decision making or problem solving exposes us to what we're really good at and what we struggle with. And it depends on what day it is, our mood, how much did we sleep last night, what did we eat.
Exactly.
So there is a lot going on when we are performing, essentially. So I'm appreciating the fact that you've exposed yourself to so many different scenarios, in order for you to be where you are today. I think, do you take that lightly about yourself?
Honestly, yes. In a way I do. And I think that's something that I should be working on more. And I only realize the things that I've done is when people point them out. Because for me, it's just another Monday and I get to work and I wake up. Like this morning, I woke up at 5:30. I had to get the ferry. I went to work. After work, I went home. I worked on some emails that I had to draft, send them, schedule things, worked on some projects that we're implementing, checked that everything is fine. And for me, it's just very routine. And the next day, something else will happen, and it will be, completely different. I nearly never have a routine, but it just constantly the flow. And then sometimes people point things out, are like, you've done quite a bit of things for your age. I'm like, yeah, I guess. Yeah. It's generally like, not to sound pompous or anything, but generally it doesn't resonate until someone points that out. And my partner points it out like quite frequently, just to make sure that I'm not doubting myself or anything like that. Whenever like I tell him, there's this thing, but I'm not sure I'm qualified enough, or I'm not sure if I even want to try. And that like the whole like imposter syndrome to even trying out, that I have worked on quite well. I remember we had this mentor that used to come in for women to women, and when you hear it for the first, second, and third time, you kind of start to believing it. And it was like, also as a woman, we tend to have certain things which we stop at earlier than what I don't mind saying, but like a straight white man would not, and would probably, even if he is not qualified to go for that interview, he would still attend, whereas a woman might not even apply. And there's scientific data, and there's like studies that have been done on this. And my partner tends to remind me a lot of where he's like, of course you can try out, you've done this and this and this. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I did. And that is the point of having a support structure, that even when you don't believe in yourself, or you don't realize that you've achieved what you've achieved, you have people to keep you accountable, not only for the bad things, but also on the really good things that you've done. So yeah, in a way, we're getting there. I would say, in short. In
a very recent podcast that I've done, it's coming out next week. Actually.
Okay, all right. I'll keep an eye out for that then.
The guest asked me a question about a common trait that I observed with the different guests that I had on the show, and this is a business kind of podcast. Okay. And my answer was that what I noticed about really successful people is that they have a common trait, the audacity to prove themselves right, that they can, that they're able to. So what are you trying to prove yourself for?
Prove myself for? I think that's a very heavy question, which would require me to think and ponder a bit on. But I would say, like, this summer, one of the things I had was that everything that came my way, if I thought I liked the idea of it, I would do it.
Okay.
And I from very big speeches at the UN to even just going to a Mets game. I knew before I went in that I definitely did not like baseball. I didn't think I would like it. I loved it. It was a vibe. Adored it. So it's like the thing that I kind of prove myself is that when I do things outside of my comfort zone, that's where I grow and that's where I thrive. But it's not just the heavy things, like the speeches at the UN, the EU, and working on amazing policy and advocacy points, which then change EU legislation. Not just that. That is cool and it's amazing and that's wonderful. But for my own personal growth outside of like formal work, it's also just the fun things. Sometimes I'm scared to do something because I will get injured. Okay, that's fair. I don't like hiking, true. But if I'm in Madeira and I don't hike, what a loss.
Missing out.
Exactly. And even if I'm doing it and I'm not feeling my best, at the end of the day, I'm going to say, wow, that was a really cool waterfall that I saw. So it's kind of like really trying to push myself to just get outside of this box. And I also try to do that by noticing the people I interact with. So obviously I work in a very multicultural setting, and we tend to have our ideology in a way that we I don't want to point this out in such a manner, but I feel like as Maltese and Gozitans, we tend to believe that what we say is right. Or it also comes from our parents, what our mother says, that is correct, definitely correct. And if you go more towards Nordic countries, I see it a bit of a difference where young, children, well, not children when we're saying minors, but rather children of parents or young adults, young people, they're left to figure themselves out more. We're kind of handheld, even as we grow older. And now I'm fairly independent. I mean, I moved out when I was 17 to start uni, but I still call my parents and ask for advice constantly, and sometimes what they say is what is in my head right until I'm proven otherwise. Whereas I realize a lot from my Swedish friends, my Danish friends, that they're kind of left to figure life out. They can go to their parents and ask for advice, of course, but their parents don't really intervene as often. And it was really like, for me, it was a bit of a culture shock, if I'm being honest, where I'm like, well, what does your mom think you should do? And they're like, I don't know, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you didn't tell them? It's because for me, it's it's second nature. It's normal.
Yep.
So that was also something where I'm like, I need to make my own decisions and believe in the decisions that I make and trust that the decisions I am making, okay, they might close some options, but they might open others. And I think that's really important, because when you're young, at least from my experience, obviously it's a very limited life experience as well, but I've had quite a bit of life experience, I would say. When you're young, the moment you say no to things, you worry that you'll never get a similar opportunity. And I think coming also maybe from Gozo, where opportunities were always quite limited, it was always like, take whatever you can and be content with that. Whereas in my case, if something doesn't sit right, I tend to say a lot more no's than yeses.
It's the abundance mindset.
Exactly. So that's kind of like, if something doesn't sit right, if I say, okay, yes, that sounds really nice, but my pro-con list, it has a bit more cons than pros, I'm not taking that opportunity, even if it's glamorous and it's going to make me richer by X amount of times. I don't do it. And so far, and hopefully this continues to be true, I found that when I say no to things, a lot more things pop up. And when I don't settle to things, I tend to find opportunities which make me a lot happier and are more aligned to my values at the end of the day. So it's not really, your original question was along the lines of what are you trying to prove yourself? It's not really that, but it's more so that I'm proving to myself as well that my decision and my opinion on things and my moral values are always held as the first priority, and whatever decision I do are in line with that. And when I say no to things, it doesn't mean that I will not have similar opportunities or even better opportunities.
Something that you reminded me of actually is one of the reasons why I started the podcast.
Okay.
I think it's very valuable. I think one of the best things that a human being can do if they are interested in growth is at the basis meeting people.
For sure.
But a step up to that thought is meeting people who are better than us in certain areas, because that will teach us what we don't know and how much we don't know actually.
Yep.
And we start identifying different role models because everyone gives us a piece of a puzzle.
Exactly.
And I think surrounding ourselves or trying actively seeking people who are better than us in different areas, mentors, coaches, friends, whatever,
yes.
I think that's a very good way of us growing and growing internally, I mean. And that's one of the ideas I had for this podcast,
course,
because I'm sure that you can relate. If you don't expose yourself to opportunities locally and abroad, we're limited with our circle of friends. Nothing wrong with that.
And it's an echo chamber.
Yes, nothing wrong with that, but that's very limiting.
It is.
You have similar or the same conversations over and over again.
Exactly.
So if you really want to expand your perspective, be exposed, perhaps uncomfortable realities or uncomfortable encounters or conversations, you need to meet new people.
And ideally meet people that have completely opposite views. And it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. I mean, obviously there's also a moral standpoint, which I always stick with. But there are people that have completely different life experience. I mean, we all, well, potentially, I'm not one to underestimate, obviously, your life experience, but growing up in a very small island, which, you know, it's not a very common life experience for most people. And it also tied us in a way where we believe that our community is the most important community and we stick by our community, and which is obviously important. You need to support and stick to your community. But you also need to understand that life is a bit beyond our shores. And that for me has always, it's a lot more. But for me, that's really important. Because for me, like, when I remember, like, when I was growing up, I never thought I would have anything familiar with someone from Iceland, ever. I have a lot of things familiar with my Icelandic colleague, a lot more than I would have thought. My Brazilian friends have a lot of things that are familiar with them. That's the thing. We're taught constantly that, well, not taught constantly, but maybe we have this cultural mindset that we stick with our friends and, you know, coming from our town, maybe with our local plant club, you know, that's kind of very typical mindset. Yes. And then you realize that a lot of other people are living their daily lives differently. And unless you seek them out, you're not going to find them. And you're going to learn a lot of new things because they have completely different life experience and they have trained in different things which you didn't even know were specialty. Like, I'm trying to think on top of my head, but I have so many different like random people that I can say, if I need to talk about really nice, fine whiskey, I have a friend who did a course on that randomly because they wanted to, and there's something about it. And it's like these random things that you just collect over the years because you meet different people.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. And I admire this kind of podcasts, people that come up with these ideas to do them for the same reason, to just enlarge in this kind of network of people in their lives, but also obviously having an online perspective on that as well.
Yes, I think it goes unnoticed, this idea to this is a very abstract way of growing internally. So being exposed to different people and trying to have different exchanges with people, I think it's something that it's an avenue that people don't usually explore to be stimulated mentally and to grow. So I think it's something that I wanted to highlight because you reminded me of it. I mean, you found that route through going abroad, involving yourself in international institutions, let's say. And that gave you that space to explore it and appreciate it as well. And every one of us can find that voice or let's say space where we can belong. Because I think human beings, we still try to find a place where we can belong.
Of course.
And some of us might. I think it's very natural, irrespective of.
You need to have some sort of identity.
Yeah.
And ideally, you form part of a group to have this kind of identity.
Yes. And that group might mean people from different areas of the world.
Exactly.
You still find the calm in the storm, let's say. So I think that is also, I'm not sure whether you encountered it, but when I was younger and used to go to parties and sorts, sometimes you find that is a grounding experience where there is all this noise, all these people, but you still find yourself. I've had very grounding experience during large mass of people.
I agree. Yeah, that's true. No, but that's true. Like I always that's the thing. Sometimes you're alone in a crowded room. I generally believe that.
Yes.
You're lonely in a crowded room. Generally believe that. But then sometimes I'm most me when I'm around a lot of people. Yeah. And that I fully understand. Like, you just find yourself, you know who you are more as you have more these opportunities. Okay, you're with a bunch of people, but you're also experiencing something by yourself.
Yes.
And it's beautiful.
The way I see it, because first of all, I relate to a lot with your kind of lifestyle. I see myself a lot in that kind of lifestyle. And so I don't usually seek large crowds. In most cases, I don't usually seek large crowds.
I understand why.
But when I do, I have this sort of like cathartic experience where I feel one out of many. But out of many, I'm one. And that kind of experience. And I think that's a very grounding experience, that you realize that there are a lot of people with different dreams, aspirations, ambitions, skills. But at the same time, I'm one of them as well. So I have my own dreams. Oh, I get very philosophical.
No, I do this as well. Like for me, like if I'm sitting at a random cafe and I'm just waiting for someone to arrive, and I just look at all the people passing by, and I think, they all have their own lives. Yeah. Some of them might have received terrible news this morning, and they've had to get up and walk their child to school or pick them up and make dinner for them to have something to eat once they arrive home. Some of them are having the best day in their lives. Some of them are about to receive the best news in their lives. Some of them are just living a typical day and they're just about to go get their coffee, like I am, and about to read maybe a book, or maybe they just started a new business, or maybe they're going to go through something really cool and they're planning a trip. Like, that's the thing. And we're all living our own little lives. But at the end of the day, and this I also think also links well, I think, with something you said earlier, which is when you work with like even businesses, there's always some element which you're going to relate to. And that usually, for me at least, is like the human element. And you realize that the junior trainee, the intern, and the most senior person will, if you tell them about something about their families or something they're really passionate about in their personal lives, that's the moment you're going to bond everyone. And I think in multilateralism, sometimes you also see it where you have a bunch of diplomats around the table, and one thing that they're kind of discussing on the sides is something that is not professional, like obviously not deeply personal or anything, but sometimes it would be like, did you hear that there's going to be a new show or something? And that links people.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we're all experiencing life for the very first time, and we're going
100%.
through, this experience of life. And that personal element, I think, is something which we all need to be a bit more aware of. And I think that I got that from debating, from training. Yeah, because in debating, essentially what you're given is just a little piece of paper with this house believes that local artifacts need to go back to their country of origin. Very random title.
Okay.
I myself might not have an opinion on a title like that. And you're given this opportunity to either be, not even, actually it's mandated, you're either on the pro or con.
Yeah.
And even if you had the completely opposite opinion, you need to make your utmost effort in order to win the debate to have the opinion that you're given.
Yeah.
And that, after you do that for a lot of times, you realize that even in life, it's the exact same thing. Where even if we have completely opposite opinions and we're literally sitting on the opposite ends of the table, we might have something which links us, and we need to figure out what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm mediating conflicts, usually the context is the place of work.
Yeah.
Is I ask, okay, what are we agreeing on? It can be 3 random things. Okay, we are agreeing that this is painful, that this will cost us money, that this will
harm the reputation.
So when you shift that kind of perspective, the people who are on opposite ends, they in some way or another they start, okay, this person is not the enemy. They are just seeing it from a different perspective.
Exactly.
It takes time.
It does. It does. And also a person's emotional intelligence varies from person to person.
100%. And then trust comes in. So
exactly.
Anyway, it's a hodgepodge of things. But that's a very good exercise for us to start seeing things in a similar way. We might not agree.
And we might never agree.
And usually when I'm giving such training, I always say, we might not agree, but we need to get out of this room aligned towards the end goal.
Exactly.
Because ultimately that is what we're striving for.
Exactly.
So if we agree that we're striving for towards this particular end goal, increase in profits, better reputation, whatever that is, then we are aligned. We might not agree how to get there, but at least we are aligned towards the end goal. And I think that puts some peace.
It does. And it's also important to adapt it also in our personal lives.
Yeah.
Because we always have factors such as stress and, how long did you sleep the night before? And you're a bit tired and you have bad news in the family, or you're just absolutely annoyed with everything that's going on that day. And sometimes it's really difficult to say, okay, but I need to get along with this person, even if I don't necessarily like them at this current moment.
Yeah.
So in a way, I do have this thing where even like we travel as a group and we all want to go to that brunch place, but before we all want to stop at different places. Okay, how do we do it? Let's have a bit of a discussion. Do we divide and conquer? You go to the bookstore with me, you go to the pharmacy, you go to the get snacks. How are we doing it? It's just like these kind of things where sometimes you need to take it a bit from a different perspective. That's very important for you, might not be important for me. But I have to understand why it's important for you and allow you to do what's important for you at the end of the day as well.
And that's actually quite hard in real life as well.
Yeah.
So life moves so fast,
Exactly.
and we're all pent up with emotions. So it's quite. Sometimes it can be quite difficult because we're not the best self is showing up.
No,
we're
definitely
tired,
not.
So
At least for me, I have to say I'm chronically exhausted, and I'm probably pissed at someone at some point. Usually my closest family and friends are the ones that are going to get the worst part of it, which is very natural because they're the people I trust the most. And they're going to see the uglier sides of me more than the people I work with professionally. That's the way it works. And we all have to have a bit of patience in that.
The way I see it is that this might sound a little bit cliche, but we can't have it all.
No, definitely.
And I think as I grow older, that's something that I've realized as well. Energy is finite.
It is.
You can have bad days and good days, and sometimes just say, okay, I've tried my best today. I really did,
about it.
But that's it. That's it. It's a wrap for today.
Yep.
And I think coming to terms with it. I struggled in the past to say, no, I can do more. I can.
No,
sometimes
you just know.
Yes, sometimes it's good to do a safe retreat. If a lot of things, so disasters are not created by one single event.
No,
they are They are created by a lot of small single events that pile up and create a disaster. And sometimes it's just wiser to call it quits for the day and try again next time.
Take a step back.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. I think this is something that we really underestimate, at least from my social settings, is how much easier it is to just take a step back, analyze, and the situation just will seem a lot lighter than how you initially thought it is. Like, I think something for me, which I have been doing recently, which is a bad habit that I want to break, is whenever I cannot fall asleep, I end up thinking of problems that might arise or situations that are coming up. And usually they're not positive situations.
Yes.
And there are clashes in my calendar, which I do not know how to address. But guess what? At 1 a.m. in the morning, definitely not going to get solved. I am tired and I'm trying to sleep and I cannot. And that's the thing. And then I sleep at least for like a night and I wake up next morning. I'm like, okay, I just need to send an email. That's it. Or call someone and they'll figure it out. But that's the point where sometimes I'm like, okay, time to retire. That's it. Next up, we'll see it for the next day.
Yes.
It's getting pushed now.
And sometimes it's about how it sits with us. Who might be don't want to quit, don't want to feel weak with ourselves. Sometimes just want to prove ourselves that we can do it. But sometimes, yes, we can do it. Just it's not our moment.
Exactly.
Just not our moment. And there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of ego, perhaps within ourselves, not with
and
others.
We don't want to let ourselves down, or the people that
Yep.
believe in us down. Of course, yeah, it's natural, and it goes by trial and error. Unfortunately,
Sorry,
it goes by trial and error.
100%,
Unfortunately,
100%. So it's something that I think we should be more aware of. That sometimes it's just not our moment, and we need to take a bit of a step back.
Yep.
Chloe, I think we're nearing the end of our episode, but I was wondering whether you have a question for me. Usually, from time to time, from podcast to podcast, I usually tend to ask this question. I was wondering if you have a question for me.
I would say I have this question usually to anyone who's doing anything which is a bit off the beaten path. And that is, what keeps you going for this? What inspires you when you're exhausted and you're done for the day? What makes you say, okay, yes, tomorrow it's another day and we have to film another 2 episodes? What keeps you going?
I think so first of all, thank you for the question.
It's okay,
So although this is not the first time that I've been asked this question, I always try to find a different way to answering this question, because the person asking the question would have phrased it in a different way.
Of course.
So I guess what I'm trying to prove myself is that I can do it, that I can show up. And I think showing up is something that, if not for others, we can do it for ourselves. I'm a person that believes in consistency and showing up through discipline, even when we don't feel like to, or when we don't feel like to. Sometimes, the more I don't feel like doing something, for example, shooting an episode, and that would be the episode that I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how that works in life, but that tends to happen more often than not. It can be a workout, it can be a walk, it can be an activity, it can be a conversation. Sometimes we over-dramatize things in our heads, but when you come to it, and they're not as bad as we would think. So I guess my drive is to show up, to be responsible, and to be responsible in a way that if I made a promise to produce 2 episodes every month, that's up to me to do it.
Yep. Oh, nice answer. I like that. You get 10 out of 10.
Thanks. You haven't been spared of the fishbone.
No.
All right.
Okay.
So
I'm excited for it though. So okay.
So
see?
Pick one.
Okay. Just gonna get around.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna move this a bit closer.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay. Oh no, we have to. Okay. Drop one back. That's for the next one. Okay, this is good. What's your favorite way to unwind and recharge? Okay, well, there's quite a few ways.
Okay.
I will have to be very honest. Sometimes it's just having a longer lie-in in bed. I love that, where I have a very late start of the day and my body rests and my mind rests. A good book, walk in the countryside, always good. And then sometimes it's just a glass of wine with the best group of people around me. And we just talk for hours about sometimes really deep philosophical things, which is very like this kind of podcast, and sometimes about just random things our families are doing. And it's just relaxing and recharges my energy. I would say people, for me, are very important as to my social battery. The right kind of people.
Yes, definitely.
They recharge me in ways nothing else does.
There are 2 kinds of people
the ones that drain it and the ones that recharge. I fully agree. And I have the pleasure of having both kinds of groups of people in my life, and the ones that recharge my batteries are the ones that I tend to seek out very frequently, and that really helps. So I would say, that's the way I do it.
Thank you, Chloë, for the answer, because I think it's a very good ending message, let's say parting message, if I may, because what we need to recharge is diverse. Sometimes we need to read a book, sometimes we need a chat, sometimes we need a coffee, there is no one size fits all, and we all require different things at any given moment. True. So knowing what we need and to have a bit of a list of what comforts us, of what feels like a hug of sorts.
Exactly.
I think it's a very good self-aware kind of situation.
So, or a physical hug.
100%.
That I know I seek them out a lot. All of my friends know that when I'm going through a tough time, all I need is like a good hug.
Good friends.
yeah, definitely. They all know it, and it's just a good hug. Maybe a nice latte, and we're good to roll.
100%. Chloë, thank you for being here. Thank you for accepting the invite, and then for showing up. I think you sent me the message, the first email that you just listened to another episode, and you sent me a message, which I appreciated. I think it was about a year ago.
I think over a year ago. Yeah, that's something I really try and do. Is like when I see people, and you realize that it's a bit different than what's happening in the local scene, is that you just reach out to them to say, well done. It's a different initiative. Probably, I would say nearly everyone has some imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I, at least for myself, sometimes I look back on the messages I receive on the worst days, and it kind of makes it a bit better. So I try to do it and kind of give it back in that way.
Chapeau.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the invitation. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Chloë.
Thank you.